Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom, I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman. A quick update from me and then to your questions, which you should put in the chat, all of which we will answer this Wednesday, the 14th of August, day 313 of the October 7th war. For clarity, here are Israel's war aims: the return of all of our hostages, 115 people, dismantling of Hamas's governmental and military capabilities, and removing the terrorist threat to Israel. Yesterday was Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the Hebrew month, the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, when Jewish people the world over remember their calamities that have befallen the Jewish people, not least the October 7th massacres and the destruction of the first and the second temples in Jerusalem. Hamas chose to attack Israel yesterday, launching rockets at us at 4 p.m. yesterday afternoon in yet another Hamas exploitation of humanitarian infrastructure in Gaza, firing from humanitarian tents themselves. Hamas launched rockets from the humanitarian tents inside Khan Yunis towards Tel Aviv. You know, Hamas hate Gazans. They trade in the lives of ordinary Gazans, deliberately embedding its military assets to carry out attacks against Israel next to humanitarian infrastructure and the civilian population inside Gaza. A double war crime. Hezbollah, attacking us from the north, do the same thing. Now to COGAT and an update on their work coordinating aid into Gaza. Aid continues to enter every day via all the crossings since the beginning of the war. More than 46,000 trucks have delivered 888,500 tons of humanitarian aid into Gaza. That's 80% more food compared to prior to October the 7th. Monday saw 194 trucks carrying humanitarian goods enter Gaza. UN aid organizations did not collect any trucks from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom. Not one. All the while, 114 private sector and other international organization trucks were collected. 575 trucks are still awaiting collection from the useless and hopelessly inefficient United Nations, awaiting them to do their job. Yesterday, COGAT conducted an NGO conference with 30 aid organizations. Discussions focused on new and upgraded donation procedures, the polio response effort, essential coordination activities, and other logistics. We will continue to deepen our humanitarian mission with close cooperation with international NGOs working in Gaza for a humanitarian response for the Gazan civilian population. So that's the end of our briefing today. I will now happily take your questions, which you should put in the chat together with your news outlet. First question here is from Leo Soroka from the Washington Post. According to Ynet, Leo asked, the families of the hostage female observers claim that only Mossad chief Dedi Barnea is expected to leave tomorrow for the summit in Doha without Ronen Bar or Nitzan Alon. Can you confirm who will be in the Israeli delegation? Thank you for that question, Lior. We're not discussing who we're sending, but I can update you on the latest on the hostage release negotiations. There have been a number of misunderstandings that have arisen. The charge that the Prime Minister added new conditions to the May 27th proposal is incorrect. The Prime Minister's July 27th letter did not introduce extra conditions and certainly does not contradict or undermine the May 27th proposal. In fact, it's Hamas that has demanded 29 changes, no less than 29 changes to the May 27th proposal, something the Prime Minister refused to do. So here are the facts. Firstly, on the Netzarim crossing, just a reminder that the Netzarim corridor, which crosses Gaza from east to west, about a third of the way down Gaza. The May 27th proposal stipulates that only unarmed civilians will be permitted to cross the Netzarim corridor to northern Gaza. Now, the reason why this is so significant is because this is precisely the area closest to Israeli villages, kibbutzim, and towns like Sderot, where most Israelis in the area live. So we have a very strong imperative to ensure that weapons and gunmen and terrorists do not go back into that area. The July 27th letter stipulates that an agreed-upon mechanism should be established to assure this, something that was initially raised by the US mediator. So the letter does not only contradict the May 27th proposal, it facilitates it. Secondly, on the number of living hostages, I know, Lior, this wasn't precisely your question, but it gives me an opportunity to speak about the specifics of the deal, which is the first time we've done that during this briefing. So the second point I want to make to you is on the number of living hostages to be released. The May 27th proposal stipulates that a specific number of hostages will be released, living or dead. Now, Israel's position in the July 27th letter stipulates that all the living hostages in the relevant category should be released, again, fully conforming to the May 27th proposal. And the third point we'd make is that the way Palestinian prisoners will be released. The May 27th proposal stipulates that Israel will have a veto over a certain number of released prisoners and can designate that at least a certain number of prisoners will be released abroad, outside Israel and outside the Palestinian Authority and outside Gaza. The July 27th letter fully conforms with this condition as well. Thus, the July 27th letter does not introduce new terms. To the contrary, it includes essential clarifications to help implement the May 27th proposal. So Israel has welcomed the outline, which has been supported by President Biden and the mediating countries, and will enable the returning of the hostages while achieving our other war goals. Until now, Hamas has continued to set terms and refused to reach an agreement. Now, Israel will send the negotiations team on the agreed upon date, that's tomorrow, August 15th, in order to finalize the details of the implementation of the framework agreement. It is Hamas that continues to set additional terms and has refused to reach an agreement. Okay, next question here is from Wire's iPhone. Wira Davis. Two questions. Wira Davis from the BBC News. Two questions, please. Firstly, has Israel got any specifics to say about the reported strike in Gaza, which killed the Al-Qassam twins and their mother? Let me. I haven't got any specifics of that on that question, Wira. I can share with you our findings from the attack which we undertook at the terrorist command and control center located inside a former school compound. I don't know if this is the same incident that you're referring to, but this former school, it's referred to in the international media as a school, it's a former school compound used as a civilian shelter. You know, if a school compound has been taken over by terrorists, it's no longer a school compound. The site that was attacked served as the Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terror organization as a shelter and as a command center from which various attacks were planned in advance against IDF troops and Israelis. The elimination of 31 Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists has been confirmed. Their pictures have been released, their jobs have been released, their affiliation to the terrorist organization, the crimes they committed have also been released. So this reflects a systematic pattern of exploiting the population and civilian infrastructure for terror purposes. The terrorist organizations have established in Gaza a vast network of tunnels which pass under homes, hospitals, mosques, and schools, and UN facilities, which are used for terrorist operations, storage of weaponry, and imprisoning Israeli hostages. Israel sees harm caused to civilians as a tragedy, while of course Hamas sees them harm to civilians as a strategy. Again and again and again, even though the BBC in particular, Wira, has got this wrong. For instance, the famous Al-Ali hospital, where the BBC claimed that hundreds of people were killed. That was nowhere near the number. And secondly, it was, of course, an Islamic Jihad rocket. So the BBC has very often got these questions wrong. They've got their information wrong. So taking, all information which comes out of Gaza is released by Hamas. It has to clear Hamas. So we should all be completely aware of that. And Hamas are using Palestinian blood, Gazans' blood. They are trading in the lives of Gazans to be able to push forward their media strategy, because that's the only way they believe that they can win against us. It is Hamas that is responsible for any and all civilian deaths within Gaza, because they systematically violate international law, performing a war crime by using the civilian population as a human shield for its terror operations. Data published by Hamas officials cannot be trusted, Wira. Very, very important point. It cannot be trusted. You wouldn't even dream of using ISIS figures at the BBC. You wouldn't dream of quoting them. You'd be shouted down. But somehow, in this scenario, you happily quote them, even if you do say that they are Hamas figures. And it's been proven in previous incidents the number of casualties are exaggerated and very often inconsistent with the data which we hold here at the Israeli government and at the Israel Defense Forces. The precise weaponry used in the attack could not have caused the amount of damage and casualties that are being reported. Furthermore, no severe damage was caused to the compound, as can be seen in the photos taken after the strike of this Hamas and Islamic Jihad compound. Prior to the strike, numerous steps were taken to mitigate the risk of harming civilians, including the use of a small warhead, aerial surveillance, and intelligence information. The event at this, the Saturday morning event, is still under IDF review. Let me just say further to that, Wira, that the BBC is being played. You are being played by the terrorists again and again and again. They embed themselves amongst where people live, where ordinary Gazans live. Yesterday's event of this rockets fired from inside a humanitarian tent, Hamas themselves released that footage. This is not Israeli footage. Hamas themselves released the footage of firing rockets at Israel from inside a humanitarian tent, inside Khan Yunis, because they want the response. They are using their own people as human shields. They want us to, and they want you to repeat, so they can repeat appalling images so that they can win this dastardly war against us. But it does not work. Hamas hate Gazans. They hate their own people. They are trading in Gazans' blood. And the BBC and you, where it should not fall for it. Okay, next question from next question from Wira Davis at the BBC. Do you expect tomorrow's talks to happen, and will Israel be sending a delegation to Qatar irrespective of Hamas's participation? Thanks. I think I did answer that question earlier, Wira. Yes, we are sending a delegation. We've made our position completely clear. We want these negotiations to succeed. It is an imperative that we get our hostages back. It's one of our key war aims. We are doing everything we can to get our people back, and Hamas, as usual, are dragging their feet and coming up with all sorts of stipulations which are unreasonable, and changing the documents and making amendments at the last moment, and all the sorts of most unpleasant aspects of negotiations in this part of the world. Okay, so that's that question. So yes, we are sending our delegation. I can confirm that, and the Prime Minister has confirmed that. Now you ask, thanks, I'm referring to a subsequent attack covered by many news outlets in which about the attack and whether children were harmed. I say to you quite clearly, Awira, the BBC is being played, okay? And I don't say that there's an agreement between Hamas and the BBC. That's not what I'm saying, and other international media, not just the BBC. But it is a key part of Hamas's strategy for you to report these unbearable images. It is an absolutely key part. They wouldn't do it unless you reported it in the way that you report. And then you bring up, other experts talking about these events. None of these experts, even the ones in Gaza, never once blame the events on Hamas. Not once did they do that. And what does that tell you? That tells you that everything which comes out of Gaza, every bit of information is controlled by Hamas. The BBC is being played. It's very clear for all to see, and you should not fall for it. Of course you have a duty to report the facts. Of course you have a duty. I note that your correspondent, who was in Gaza, has moved to Istanbul. So you have a duty, of course, to report the facts, but you are, Gaza, Hamas relies on the BBC to produce these appalling images. That's the only reason that's the only way they think they can beat us. Next question is from Jim Williams at Zenga International News. Good afternoon, David. Defense Secretary Austin has sent 2 more warships and a submarine to the region. Also, the head of CENTCOM, General Kurilia, is in Israel to work with his Israeli counterparts. Do you think that this show of force and the linking of the US and Israel helps make Iran think twice about a large attack on Israel? Thank you very much for that question, Jim. Look, as the President of Israel made clear just this morning and echoed by the Prime Minister, and I think in common with everyone here in Israel, our security services remain on extremely high alert. The government expresses its full appreciation and thanks to our allies standing united with us in the face of the hate-filled threats of the Iranian regime and its terrorist proxies. And of course, in particular, we must thank the government of the US, and the entire government here expresses its gratitude to all the allies as part of the coalition, to President Biden and to other leaders for this American leadership, for their steadfast commitment in words as well as deeds to the safety and security of Israel. As the President said this morning, our President said this morning, together we stand side by side in defense of the free world. The international community stands together to curb the dangerous ambitions of Iran, which states its intentions to destroy the state of Israel and threatens both regional stability and the free world. Prime Minister's made that clear, and the President have made that clear, and all of us here in the government are in agreement, and indeed people living here in Israel. And the second part of your question was whether we think this will make Iran think twice about an attack on Israel. Look, Iran, there's an axis of evil here, and they formed what they think is a stranglehold against Israel. And now I can't speak for the Iranians and how they think. I'm a representative of a democratic government fighting for its life, literally fighting for our life. This is an existential war against us. And Iran have arranged a ring of armed terror armies to surround us. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and other militias, and Iran itself. But I can't go into the heads of the Iranian government, not the Iranian people, because the Iranian people hate Hamas as well, and they hate the regime of Iran as well. But Israel will exact a heavy price for any aggression against us. So the last thing we want is another front or more attacks upon us. But we are strong and we are ready for an attack from any arena. Our long arm will reach anyone who causes harm to our civilians. And, you know, the elimination of the commanders of the military wings of both Hamas and Hezbollah should be understood as a very, very clear message to anyone who threatens this country. So against the background of these threats, the State of Israel is ready for any scenario, defensive or offensive. That said, there is currently no change to the defense instructions by the Home Front Command, but we encourage our country to remain informed and to follow any new guidance as instructed. We are strong and we are ready. Okay, any other, you want to scroll down, anything else? No, that was the last question. Okay, so thank you for joining us. There won't be a briefing tomorrow, so we are, the next briefing will be next week as things stand right now. In the meantime, do please stay safe, and we look forward to joining us next time at the next briefing. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.